Aiken, Carolyn Howell, Mike Anderson, and Brett Mastriani. And Sarah is sitting as an alternate, Sarah Nelson. All right, first and second on the agenda is public comments. Christine, if you could help us out with that.
So if we have any public on the line, please raise your virtual hand so that you can be recognized to speak. There should be at the bottom of your screen a button that says raise hand. We don't have anybody that's calling in on a phone. I'm not seeing any hands, so if there's anyone who wants to speak that doesn't know how to find that button, just unmute yourself and start talking.
I see a hand moving. I don't know what that means. But...
That's Joe. Joe, do you have comment? Joe Gross.
Joe.
Maybe not.
All right. I would say we have no public comment at this time.
Okay. Next on the agenda is correspondence. Two things. I did speak with Christine Wagner relative to scheduling of the Board of Ed presentation to the Board of Finance, and you would have gotten an updated budget timeline. So they're coming in on March 10th, Wednesday, March 10th.
Okay, Dan, I only sent that updated draft to you, so I can send that to the rest of the board tomorrow.
Yeah, you would please. Yeah, great. The other is that you can help me with this, Christine, but I'm pretty sure we have an executed engagement letter for our auditor with Sandra Wellwood, LLC.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so those are the only pieces I have. Next is the Board of Selectmen Profit Loss Report, followed by the tax report. I don't know if you have any questions, but between Christine and myself, we'll get them answered if you do. On the tax report, you'll notice that we're a little behind. We're roughly 85%. Usually we see a pretty good makeup in the next month, this month. And whether or not there's been an impact with COVID, it's hard for me to judge, but that could be part of it as well. So we need what we need. So and Karen knows that.
Yeah.
If there's no questions there, you also have the Board of Ed profit loss statement. I did not, in my own review, I didn't see anything out of line there, but if there's any comments.
And
yeah, Dan Smith.
On the general fund profit and loss, B2723 hazardous waste collection is up. Well, it's over by almost close to 400%. What is that?
Can you tell me the line one more time?
Hazardous waste collection, hazmat waste collection.
What was the number?
B2723.
So that is so I did look at that because I saw that it was over, and we have in there the overtime that we had for the SCARA hazardous waste collection that we did back in September. I need to double check what we've done in past years, if that normally comes out of that line or if that normally comes out of the highway overtime other line. But that's all it is it's the overtime staffing for that hazardous waste collection day.
Okay.
And we were, so it's not just our town, it's anyone that's from a SCARA town that can come to it. And I think we may have been the first one that was allowed to happen with COVID. So we may have had people on than we would have normally. So.
Yeah. The only other question I had, and this is just a general question. Have we locked down a roundabout monthly set of bills of utilities for the old school?
I don't really think that we can because it's utilities like at your house. So in the winter, you're going to have higher bills for your energy use for your gas than you would in the summer.
But we've been in winter for what, 2 months now at least of decent cold. So electric bill, the Board of Ed is also in there, correct?
The central administration is in the building, yes.
So how many months have they been in the building?
They haven't left.
They haven't left. Okay, so we mothballed the rest of it and we've had them in they haven't left. So the gas, the electric is fluctuating that much month by month?
Yes, because I think it's been explained in other meetings that there's no zones for the heat. So we have it running as efficiently as it can. I can pull the bills and have them for your next meeting so you can just have a sample. That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, we truly do think it's going to cost about $150,000 a year to run all the utilities and the maintenance for the building. So with the fluctuations month to month, that's what we think the overall budget should be for those utilities.
And the solar panels on the roof are online?
No, not yet.
When is that planning on coming online?
That all has to do with the company that's installing them. I don't have to check in. I haven't had any meetings with them on that.
I'm all set.
So we got a couple of things that you're going to bring answers to those questions back, Christine.
Mhm.
Brett, next.
Yeah, it goes back to the 298. Am I reading that we're up to 64,000 now?
Yes.
So we went from, if I was reading in January, were we at 38,000?
I was asked to stop paying the bills until the joint meeting was held between the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen to discuss the utility bills, not any new. There's been no new work done at the building. It's all Eversource. It's really all Eversource. You know, as you've seen, we have the monthly Griggs and Brown treatment for the pest problem that's in the offices that central administration's in. So, you know, like I said, Mike had said that we weren't going to pay any bills until you guys had that meeting. So that's why there was a lull in bills and then we had to get caught up.
So the electric bills were $26,000.
2 gas bills and 1 electric bill every month. Yeah.
Okay. So did we decide how this was going to be handled, Dan, yet? I know so I was a little concerned at last night's Board of Selectmen's meeting when it was talked about that we're going to try to lease it for the next 5 months. And then and that was based on Mike Anderson's idea to give them 5 months. But then it sounded like if the 5 months they don't lease it, that the Board of Selectmen were looking to then potentially put it on the market for a sale. I thought when we talked about this at the meeting, we were going to look at all avenues at once so that we're not delaying this process even longer. Because I'd hate to see us go 5 months trying to lease it. It doesn't get leased. And now we try to sell it for another 6 months or 7 months. I know the listing contract is a year until December, so I don't know how that affects anything. But I don't know if we ever discussed how this was going to be handled and whether we're waiting till the end to go for an appropriation, one solid appropriation at the end of this. I don't think we ever was clarified. And if you could clarify that, that'd be great.
Yeah, one, I think they're we're not handling the building. Understand that. Board of Selectmen is. And that, from what I understand, it was a joint campaign to either rent or lease. So, I mean, they were entertaining potential prospects for purchase as well, if I understood what I heard the last time we met. And that, yes, we would continue to look at transfer of line items as we get closer to the end of the year, or come in for an appropriation to offset the costs being generated by the old middle high school.
Okay, and you're comfortable with that process?
So there's not much else we can do at this point, Brett.
Okay.
And the administration of all of this is the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen. Now, we have 2 selectmen on. If they would like to comment, I'd welcome it.
Yeah, I'd love that too, because like I said, there was a message last night of renting it for trying to rent for 5 months and then deciding if they were going to try to sell it, which just extends this whole expenditure. So that I'd love if one of them could comment.
Bob Carlson, please. Thank you.
Right, so I recommended last night, before we move forward with any sale, we talked to the library. We didn't speak to the library prior to, in my mind, wasting about 6 months with the what was the name of that committee, Nita? The refurbishing committee, revitalizing committee, whatever it was. So I wasn't on it, but they came with about many what would be considered great ideas, only to find out that 80% of them wouldn't fly because of the deed restriction. And so it was a waste of time on those ideas. I would hate to make that same mistake again. So I think that as I recommended last night, we talked to the library and see exactly what deed restriction is on it and if it travels with the sale. And also, it was going to be, I still want to be on that subcommittee and make sure that the sale is not the only option, that there's also a tear down option, which is what the town originally had voted for, was to demolish the middle school. Want to make sure that's still one of our options. So to answer your question, Brett, I think it's still under discussion on exactly what that subcommittee will finally, as far as their mission statement, will the mission statement read just to sell it if we don't lease it, or will there be other options, which I am holding out hope that there will be. So.
But do you think that will be 5 months down the road? That's what it sounded like last night, that it'd be 5 months before you decide whether you try to sell it.
Right, so I think that he wanted to give it one last shot to lease out both wings. What would be the best thing for the town would be if we could lease out both wings and have revenue come from both wings to the town and not have any liability, and both wings are within the deed restriction of the library. That would be a perfect storm. But if it doesn't happen, we can at least say as a town we gave it a shot, and now we fall back onto what the town originally voted for, which was a demolition.
Thank you.
Mike, I think your hand up was next. Mike Anderson.
Yeah, I want to clarify, make sure we all understand, with regard to the utilities, that Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, you say there's no way to change the zone, so you can't determine how much energy is being used by the middle school, because according to the original resolution, that was the only portion of this building to be torn down is the existing middle school.
Right.
And when we're talking about what timelines for sale or leasing, you have to keep those two separate, because the high school portion, the 2-story building is never contemplated being taken down. It's still going to be an expense. It's not being used by the Board of Education. And so I think in our discussions, you really all have to clarify the fact that we're talking about 2 wings here. And to Bob's point, if we could lease both of them out, that's a home run for us. And if we can't, then there might be a tear down of the middle school, might be a tear down of the high school, but that high school, that's going to be a completely different animal, and that was never part of the original project. I just want to make sure that we understand that, and that's always cleared up or discussed when we're talking about this, including how much how expensive it is to maintain those right now, to heat and to cool or whatever. You know, we can't parse them apart. Is that right, Christine?
Correct. I mean, if you want to look at it just in very broad strokes, rough terms, if you think of each section of the building as a third, even if you got rid of the middle school wing, you would still have $100,000 worth of expenses. These are broad brush strokes, but just something to keep in mind, because you're still going to have the central administration area, you're still going to have the media center area, you're still going to have the two-story wing. And some of the expenses, like the elevator maintenance, are specific to the two-story wing. So.
And then the other to all of this, Mike, and to the board in general, is we would expect as Board of Selectmen come forward with their budget that we see budgeting for that entity. You know, with the thought that we still have to pay the bills and maintain the building until final decisions are made. Carolyn, I think you were next.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question because it keeps being mentioned about selling the building, and I don't know how that's even possible. Also, it's concerning because you tell us that the building's an asset of the town. So if you sell this building, the two-story building that was supposed to be leased out, you lose, you know, possible revenue source where, you know, you sell it, you get the money one time, and then it could be spent in one fiscal year, the way that things are being brought forward to be purchased at this time. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm just asking a question. I don't know why all of a sudden we're talking about selling the building when that was never the intent of anything that we've put forward to the public in the past. And then I also had a question, it's kind of related to this. I'm not really sure where to put this question. I was talking to Bob Carlson the other day, and he mentioned in regards to the report that I was asking for expenses or check registers, he said that there's actually a report that Christine, you generate each month for the selectmen that it sounds like it has the information that I was asking for on it. So has that been discussed? Can you share that with the Board of Finance?
So I know Dan had said you were going to discuss all that at this meeting. I talked to Mike today about the reporting and what was, so he wants me to bring whatever comes from this meeting back to him. But there does need to be discussion of ground rules and parameters, as he said at your last meeting, as far as what's being sent. What Bob talked about with you is when the checks are run every week, there's a report that Susan is able to save, and it's not 100% every single check, because if she's running a check not with that check run, or if something comes up, it's not every single thing, and it's not a report that lives in the system. Once you load new checks in, that report disappears. So that is an option, and that may suffice, but that was why I was trying to find out exactly which details you want in a report. When you say transactions, do you want vendor? Do you want date? Do you want check number? Do you want itemized invoices? I'm looking for exactly what information you want. And then once I know what you need, then we can figure out what reports accommodate that.
So basically what I was looking for is something that would have a date, who was paid, how much was paid, and what account it was applied to.
Okay, thank you.
Relative to all that, we're going to have discussion on that further on in the agenda. So Carolyn, you're not setting what the request is for the Board of Finance. We're going to talk about it so we can decide what the protocol should be.
And I'm not asking to set it, but I also am asking as taxpayer. So I'm not just here as Board of Finance member. I've also made requests, you know, as taxpayers. So I think the taxpayers have been asking for this information as well. And I think that it should be made available. It's not personal and confidential information. And I think it opens up good conversations for us to have about where the money is being spent and how we might be able to save some money by doing things a little bit differently.
Okay, was there any other Sarah, you had your hand up? I'm sorry.
I had, that's
We're
okay. So
getting lost against the refrigerator. I think it's the refrigerator.
and sometimes it's better to put the electronic hand up, and sometimes it's not. So it's always,
Yeah.
so it's a pick or choose. So I just want to go back to some of Dan Smith's original questions, and I just think if Christine, if you could help us out a little bit. I know that the costs are variable for the old middle school, high school. I think what would be really helpful, if it's not a ton of extra work for you, is to possibly get a breakdown of, say, like the last quarter. I think we've been paying the bills for the last quarter of what the fixed costs are. So what are the costs that are just like our electric or gas, understanding that it's variable in the summer, it's going to be worse. And then what were the costs that were repairs, etc. I think it would just be helpful when we figure out however this resolves out, right? It's the Board of Selectmen's responsibility to come with an appropriation for this overspend this year. It's going to be your responsibility to put it in the budget for next year. But it's hard for us to assess whether what against what you're actually submitting without some sort of understanding of what we're paying now. So a little bit, like I personally, we can talk about some of the other requests later. I personally don't need to see like the invoices, but if I can see like December, we spent $10,000 on fixed cost and we spent $5,000 on repairs. January was, this and this, just that level, I think would help set an understanding of what's a reasonable expectation over the course of a quarter that we could extrapolate. Might be high, might be a little low, but at least it would be something.
Yeah, I had sent you guys back in January when we were having that joint meeting. I sent a FY21 expense projection that broke down the utilities, the maintenance, the repair, and the miscellaneous. So some of that was actual, some of it was information we had gotten from the Board of Education, and some of it was estimates based on prior Eversource bills. I think that I can do what you're asking for. Dan is calling me and he's not in the meeting. Hold on. Hi. Okay. Okay, do you want me to put you on speakerphone? Okay, guys, I have Dan on speakerphone on my phone so he can hear through my computer as I'm talking to you until he can reconnect. So train of thought. So I can put together what we've spent so far, but I think that has the best picture of what we really truly can expect. I went off of service contracts that we have in existence for the building. And then there's a lot of things that I don't know cyclically when they come due, because the Board of Ed has paid them in the past. So that will give the best overall projection. But like I said, I can put together a breakdown of what we've paid out, if that would help you guys.
Yeah, I think it for me, and hopefully I guess, if the other folks don't think it's helpful, then I don't want to make you go do it. But I did appreciate what you put together. I do remember I think there was like December was in there, maybe November, I can't remember. So if you were able to refresh January, so we had that, I think we'd have 3 months, and we could basically say, all right, here's 3 months of expenses of fixed costs, 3 months of expenses of repairs and unexpected costs, and it'll give us a little bit of a better comfort level, understanding. So whenever we get to the next step around solving it from an appropriation perspective or whatever it is we need to do, that'll be sort of I don't know the right word, but a model for
what I'll do is I'll do everything we've paid July through December, just so you have that the 6 months, because that way it won't really matter like when we paid it.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Christine.
The other thing I might add at this point is if it's coming in as a budget item, all of the backup should be made available relative to that.
So Dan, since you can't see people, is it okay if I kind of play moderator calling on
Yeah,
board
yeah,
members?
please. I don't know what's happened on my end. I thought that I was, coming to Sarah's problem, and I've got a problem. So I apologize.
So Dan Smith, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so Christine, is that $150,000 that you guys budgeted, is that general government's portion of it, or is that a total including the Board of Ed's portion?
So the general government is going to be responsible for paying all the invoices that we receive. So regardless if we have 15 tenants in the building or just Board of Education, the bills are going to be paid by general government. And then we would send out invoices for the portions to whoever the tenants are. So the plan in the draft budget as of right now is to budget the entire amount and then put the known in the revenue. So anything that we bring in with tenants, just like we do for the restaurant and for the Wellfield lease and the Hayfield lease and everything else that we rent out, we have those broken down in our revenue side. So with discussions we've had with the Board of Ed, we have a figure in there for what their portion is going to be. And then it's up to the Board of Selectmen if they want to put in any other revenue for potential tenants. So since they haven't finalized their budget, I can't speak to that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Brett, go ahead.
Just one more thing on this part of the budget with the school. I just would be careful of how we proceed going forward and try to really come up with a plan, because I do worry that if the money isn't allocated correctly, and if there's an issue with a appropriation, if we have to go to the town and we do go over the budget item or budget for the whole highway department, then the person responsible for going over the budget is personally liable according to state statute. I don't have the exact state statute in front of me, but
It's 7:30.
that's how it's written. So it makes me nervous that if we all approve this stuff and keep letting it go, and then it goes to a town meeting and it gets shot down somehow, that someone's personally liable for the overage for the whole department. But Christine, on another note, the B26.12 Ambulance Association, this is just to help me understand, it's at 75%. Are those things that we pay early in the year, just like I think on one of the 9/11 911 services, we're at 75%. Is that just prepaid?
So certain things get paid out quarterly. The Ambulance Association bills is quarterly. The fire company bills is quarterly. 911 dispatch bills is quarterly. So most of those are where you see an exact 75%.
Okay, so we're all on good with those. Okay.
Yes. Mike Anderson, go ahead.
I just kind of want to go back to Carolyn's question about how you sell these properties, and anyone else can correct me if I'm wrong here. Basically you have a piece of property that's deeded from the library. It has a reverter clause, which says basically if these properties aren't used for education purposes, they would revert back to the Wheeler Library Trust. So the town got these properties from Wheeler, put these buildings on it, and whoever buys it is taking it with the buildings that are on it. But the land itself has a certain restriction that if the real estate is not being used for educational purposes, they're in violation of the deed that goes with the land. It has nothing to do with the buildings. The buildings are just on there. So when you're talking about selling it, you're selling it with the buildings on there and all the liabilities that come with buildings. And they're also come with the liability with the stipulation that they have to use that land for education purposes. So you can sell it.
Right. And I just want to point out one thing. Yes, you have the one-time revenue of selling it, but if you sell it if it's no longer a municipal property, it would be subject to property tax. So we would be able to continually collect revenue from it for those purposes. So I'm not advocating one way or another, but it's just one piece that I wanted you guys to have.
That's a good point.
So I just have one more question, and maybe Mike, you would know the answer. Just what would the impact be to the village area should it be sold to someone? And should it, you just kind of, I guess, lose control over. I mean, if the school is being run and it's owned by the town, obviously you have more control over that than if it's purchased by a private entity or group.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking to me or are you talking to Mike Ergo?
Ergo's not on. She's talking to you.
Okay. Yeah, a person could come in there and tear down those buildings, put up a high rise, as long as it's being used for education purposes and is compliant with zoning laws, then yeah, you would lose control over what is done with that property. And they could probably kick the central office out of there. Kick the Board of Education out of there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, if they're talking about doing something, maybe there should be a lot of thought and discussion and to the direct and indirect impacts of everything that we're doing. That's all.
Yeah, and I think giving them more time to try to lease it out so we have, configure this stuff out, I think it was a good idea. And, if not, then we're going to have to, we have two choices. You tear them down. And in that case, I don't think you just tear down the middle school. You're going to have to tear down the high school too. I mean, that's why I want everyone to remember that we have a building here that was not part of the original building project, that it's still going to have to be considered when we're talking about a tear down. If we don't want the utilities for it and we only want to have the central office over there, then tear them both down. And that's an expensive. You think it's expensive to tear down the middle school. I think the high school is going to be just as much, if not more.
Okay, does anyone else have anything on the tax report or the Board of Selectmen profit and loss, or can we move on to the Board of Ed profit and loss?
Yeah, let's move on. I mean, relative to 298, let me make this clear, is that we can offer some recommendations, we can weigh in, but the responsibility of the administration of that town asset is Board of Selectmen. And I think the Board of Selectmen too, in this meeting, should understand that, we're concerned about it relative to the expense and its impact to the budget. So, I would hope that the Board of Selectmen can help bring forward a more definitive plan. Now we can move on.
Okay, does anyone have questions on the Board of Ed profit and loss statement? Dan Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, this is probably just more to confirm what I'm actually thinking is the substitute teacher salaries that are over, I think it's 123 and 181%. Is that due to COVID and high and also having a higher pay during COVID?
I had asked Peter Nero about that, and that's the answer he gave me. I can get something that's more specific, but that was his quick answer.
Okay, and then also I think it's the code 1230, which is new equipment, 234% over. Is that because of like Chromebooks and PPE?
I can get something more specific. I didn't ask him about that one, but yes. Yeah, I'll find out.
I'm assuming it is probably one of those two, if not both.
Yep.
That's all I had.
All right, I think I'm back in.
We see you.
I'm going to put my phone down.
Okay. You just need to unmute on the computer.
Good questions, Dan, and I'll get a further answer on the one I didn't have an answer for.
Just to build on Dan's question, I think I don't know. So the answer to the question about the equipment will be important. I know I was on a Board of Ed meeting where they were talking about some of the dividers and things they needed to purchase. I suspect it's something related to that. So the follow-on question to that then would be like, are they expecting any sort of COVID grants that will offset those costs or not? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think that they have, applied for that, and anything related to COVID would be reimbursable, as I understand it. Is that right, Christine?
Yes, they've received separate grants from what the town has gotten. I want to say that they're eligible for around $160,000 in additional grants, but I think that's over a 2-year period. Again, I don't want to misspeak for them, but based on some information, Brett, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, it was 167, I think it was for 2 years. So when I was listening to that meeting the other night, I know Peter talked about it, saying that's all right now that's what they think, that's all they're going to get for those 2 years, and they have to make sure it's spread out correctly. So 167 was that number.
Carolyn Howell, I know that you've been in and out of those meetings. Do you have anything to report? I don't think we've ever gotten a report on any of this.
I haven't had a chance to sit in on their meeting. They changed my hours at work, so I've been more like not able to be as flexible as I used to be able to be. I just had a question. So Brett, the 167 grant, are you talking about, is that for PPE expenses, or is that for?
I think it's anything COVID related.
Right. I think Dan's correct. It's anything COVID related.
Because the new stuff they're talking about giving to the education system, they said is going to be for like air filtration systems and things like that. So I didn't know, but at least that's what they're reporting in the news. I don't know if they've had more discussions about the restrictions on it.
I think relative to air filtration and just generally relative to these grants, that's been one of the biggest priorities or concerns. And I'm happy to report that because of our new elementary school, or renovated elementary school, we have excellent filtration and climate through the climate control of the buildings.
So is it already compliant to what the new guidelines are for COVID and things like that? Or is there anything different that they're going to have?
I can ask Peter Nero that, but what we did at that elementary school is state of the art in terms of filtration, state of the art.
Yeah, and Carolyn, I believe that they are, and I believe at one of the meetings, it wasn't the last one, probably a few ago, they actually upgraded the type of filters they use too, even from the start of the building to now. And it was an increased cost, but they're better filters. Yeah, and Dan, I attend most of those when they don't interfere with here. So if Carolyn can't get there, I can always take notes, and if you need a report, I can give you something.
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice to know. For instance, as they were rolling along the pushing out of their presentation to Board of Finance, I mean, other than getting a quick phone call or a text while we're having a meeting, I had no sense as to that happening.
Yeah, I've been trying to follow that budget along the process in the back and forth between administrators, Peter, and the Board of Ed. So I've been taking my notes, but I can do more of that and have a report for you.
That'd be great. Dan Smith, you're next.
Yeah, Christine, how much of that, I know it's approximate 167K over the 2 years, have we already burnt?
I don't have any of the information from the Board of Ed on that. Because that's strictly Board of Ed money. That's not town money.
Okay.
That was a new grant, Dan. They just got that.
They just got that?
I don't know if they burnt any of it yet, but they just got it.
Do you know how much of what they're going to apply to that money that they just got in?
I can check.
Do they have 200,000? Do they have $160,000 worth of costs to basically wipe that out, or is it like only they have like $5,000-6,000 that they need to use and they're going to continue to use it? It'd be nice to see where they're kind of at with that.
Oh, go ahead, Dan, sorry.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that I know as compared to other towns, we were not expending as much per Peter Nero, one, because of our new facility, and
Mhm.
and that again, whatever they do spend relative to the grant, it's a reimbursable situation, so it's not a cost to the town whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think it's this grant, they can't use it to offset their budget. They have to use it for things that were unbudgeted that have come up due to COVID.
Shields, PPE, certain stuff like that. I'm sure they have probably a pretty strict criteria for that. I'm just wondering if they have a bunch of bills that they're waiting and they got this money and everything, and then all of a sudden we're gonna start seeing all these back bills being paid, like the new equipment line. We're gonna all of a sudden see that decrease, or how? It was just a question.
I know Peter did really emphasize the point that that's got to last them 2 years for expenses. So they didn't talk about it going back on paying older stuff, but he really emphasized to the board that has to last 2 years because they don't know if they'll ever get any more.
Yeah, another thing is Robbie takes really detailed minutes that are posted on the Board of Ed website. So if you're curious about how things have been going, it's really easy to follow along there.
Incredibly detailed minutes is unbelievable.
All right, good stuff. Anything more on the Board of Ed budget? Okay, Dan, I will come back to the board and to you on questions to Peter Nero.
Thank you.
On the Board of Finance policies, I know we still have one outstanding. Nothing's been sent forward to the board members, though.
I think at the last meeting, you guys decided to kind of put it aside for several weeks with the budget.
You told me I had 2 to 3 weeks, Dan. So I'm banking one of my weeks.
No draft yet, I guess is what I'm saying.
That would be correct.
That's fine. Okay. I just think it's important to keep it on the agenda to keep view of.
No, I agree with you, and I think it might help settle a lot of the discussion around the 298 building, because it specifically talks about reconciliation and when it needs to be completed. So it'll be a good conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. Previous minutes, we have quite a packet. I'm trying to remember the count, if it was 6 or 7. And we can go through them individually, or we can do it as a package. So I took a quick look at them. I didn't find a lot that I would have amended, but I'm willing to listen to other Board of Finance members. Would you be willing for us to put forward a motion to approve the package? Dan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, if we're gonna approve it by a package, it's just I was gonna just try to cut down on some of the length of it. Just say discussion and comments were made, and just trying to make it a little more concise. I don't think I had any real editorial comments through any of the reviews. Like the previous minutes from February 10th talked about, well, the minutes that were for December 16th, it basically went down every single agenda item where we made editorial changes to the minutes. I don't know if we really need to get down to that much detail, but if we want to approve them as a whole, I'm fine with that.
I'd like to make a motion to approve those as a bulk as a bulk minutes.
All right, we would have to have the dates, Brett.
Yeah, so let's see, we have, I'll have to click on one. So I have January 6th.
Yeah.
13.
January 13th,
Mhm.
January 20th, which were a lot easier for me to read in that size, and February 3rd, and the joint meeting February 10th.
Second that.
Okay, now that we've got the dates, any further discussion on them? Okay, if not, we'll poll. So Dan Smith?
Aye.
Okay. Ann Aiken,
Aye.
Carolyn Howell,
Yay.
Mike Anderson,
Aye, thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
Brett,
I'll abstain because I wasn't seated at all those.
okay, and myself would be a yay. So we've got a 5-0-1. All right, thanks. If we can get him into the town clerk.
Will do.
And thank you, Carolyn. Also, the meeting you stepped up, I appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work, but it's something that we have a responsibility to and just got to keep on top of.
So I'm hearing that the abbreviated format isn't abbreviated enough and the font should be bigger.
Brett's got old eyes.
My eyes are getting a little older.
So are
But no,
mine.
it was good. I can always make the font bigger on mine.
Well, it's easy enough for me to do. If you would like that, I can do that.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I think to Dan's point, and I know at one point I had brought this to Carolyn Howell, that not every word has to be taken down. You know, if it's just discussion, it's discussion. So if it's something that's really germane and relevant, that's important to the agenda items in particular, it should be well noted. Dan Smith?
Yeah, maybe this is more for Christine and everything. Since we're going to Zoom and we post everything on YouTube and everything's recorded, has there been any changes to the either laws or rules on how we have to record these type of meeting minutes?
No, I don't think there's been any changes as far as still needing to file official minutes through the town clerk's office.
Okay, because we usually have to have a voice recording of it and a written recording. I didn't know if this supersedes now with everything going to Zoom and YouTube and everything else, those recordings.
I don't think we have to have a voice recording. I think we just have to have a written record filed with the town clerk's office in case people want to go back, because there's boards that don't record
Okay.
their meetings. So
What about like Americans with disabilities? What if somebody can't see or can't read? I'm just putting it out there.
I would check with the town clerk's office. She may have the information on that because nothing has changed. So
I was just wondering.
Right, that would bring us to future strategies. We talked about the 21-22 budget schedule and that the new timeline will be sent out tomorrow. Christine?
Yeah. Dan, so does that mean that there would be no meeting next week because it was going to be a special meeting held for the purpose of the selectmen presenting their budget?
Correct.
So the selectmen aren't presenting next week? I
Well,
thought only the Board of Ed moved theirs.
No, the selectmen have moved theirs to the 3rd and the Board of Ed have moved theirs to the 10th. So they've both shifted on the calendar.
So that's not a discussion, that's just decided.
Yeah, in that the Board of Ed was asking for the extension. You know, it just gave space to allow Board of Selectmen another week or whatever it was going to be, 2 weeks to prepare.
It's one extra week for the Board of Selectmen.
Next week, yeah.
So can you just, since you can't send it out tonight, can you just give us those dates? So I just write them down, just so I can.
Yep, so the Board of Selectmen is presenting on March 10th, and the Board of Ed is presenting, sorry, March 3rd.
No,
Misspoke. Board of Selectmen, March 3rd, Board of Ed, March 10th. I should be able to actually send it to you guys right now because I have my email open and I should have it in there. So I will do that as we are talking. So nobody ask me any hard questions.
and again, a lot of this was being pushed by Board of Ed needing more time. Dan Smith?
So with these presentations of the budget being, it looks like we're having a 2 to 3 week slip of this. That's going to impact our ability to really go through, because it looked like March was going to be our time to go through the budget, both budgets, and deliberate. And I know last year it took us a considerable amount of time to go through each one of the budgets. And to keep the timeline, has anybody talked about sliding this thing to the right? Because it's not leaving us as an oversight board to do our due diligence. It's kind of putting us in a real big pickle.
I would wait until you see the schedule before you say that, because Nita and I worked on it to try to give everyone as much time as they had before.
But if we're not getting it until 2 and 3 weeks later than what the original schedule was, I mean, we go through those things and we look through things and then we meet about it. So I do think that there should be some kind of shift. Otherwise you are rushing our process.
I just sent it out. So if you have access to your emails, you can take a look.
Yeah, we also have the ability, Brett, to call special meetings. So we'll see how it goes. And it was Board of Ed that came forward, as you may know, with multiple pleas to get a little more time. And then our big restriction is advertising before the public hearing. Which is in the April timeframe. So you're right. I mean, the month of March is when we got to get it done.
So if we look at this, we talk about the budget on the 17th. And then we don't have meetings with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Ed. Are we just writing or sending back feedback?
Yes. Yep.
And then they come back on the 24th with their changes.
Yep.
That's not a change. The terminology on the schedule isn't a change from what it was before.
No, I didn't.
I just wanted to let you know.
Clarify, yeah. Okay.
Dan, is your hand up again, or you didn't take it down? It's up again.
Yeah, it's up again. So
Okay.
we were supposed to be basically deliberating about the budget, like you're saying, Dan, through the month of March, the 3rd. And it sounded like it looks like a going back period, I think on the 10th and the 17th, we were supposed to deliberate. And then pretty much, like you said, the whole month of March is our time to, I guess, if you want to use the word shine. But I really would like to see this new, I'm trying to get the schedule to pull up, but how far are they going to move it to the right? Are we going to do 2 a week? Or, that's my question.
I can share my screen so that you guys can see it.
That'd be great. Thanks.
I will make it much bigger.
Is there a specific reason why the Board of Selectmen pushed? Because that, at our last meeting, that wasn't, they said they'd be ready to go on their original date, and that's why they didn't want to flip-flop with the Board of Ed.
When they met last night and talked about the budget, they did not, there's still elements of the budget that they're reviewing and changing. And they have requested a presentation from the Emergency Services Operations Committee on their findings to see if that has an impact on any of the emergency services budgets. And that presentation isn't happening until the 23rd. So that I think may have had an impact on why they're moving to the 3rd.
Okay, so are they having any special meetings to try to get their process done?
They had a special meeting last night.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I don't know if Nita or Bob have anything they want to say on that.
Dan, is your hand back up?
Oh, Bob Carlson has a comment.
Yeah, because Christine asked, I will say something that that's exactly right. We wanted to have, before we went any deeper into the fire company's budget or the ambulance's budget, we wanted to get feedback from the Emergency Service Committee that's been meeting for the last, several months. So we just thought that would be pertinent to listen to their findings prior to digging deeper into those two budgets. So that's why that's not going to happen until next Tuesday, I believe. So that's why we took the extra week, because we knew we had it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right. Next, under future strategies, I just put budget review to date. We've heard some presentations. I've made some notes relative to the requests. I don't know if there's anything anybody wants to add at this point until all pieces come together.
It's 8 o'clock.
Dan Smith?
Yeah, I know a couple of people from in my neighborhood have asked about the mill rate. Everybody's asking about the mill rate. Everybody's looking at their assessments, and it's either, they've gone down, they've gone up, or they stay the same. I'm pretty sure that nobody on this board, except for Dan, has been around since the last evaluation where we had to adjust the mill rate. But what is the protocol for adjusting the mill rate? Do we do that prior to setting the mill rate, after the setting the mill rate? What is the overall procedure and how to do that?
Right. It's going to be just as it was last year, Dan. We look at all the pieces of the budget, what we think should be in there. We take into consideration what the new grand list is, which, I always term the phrase, it's the engine for all that we wish to have happen. And if everything were to stay apples to apples, in other words, if we had the same budget this next fiscal year as we do now, and we had an 8% increase in the grand list, the correlation would be an 8% decrease in the mill rate. But, we can't say that until we look at all the pieces of the budget and decide relative to the needs and what has been requested that we deem should be in the budget proposed, and then look at how does the mill rate calculus happen.
So Dan, my other question would be, with what we have had presented to us with debt redemption that we know we have to pay, and what has been presented in front of us, what are we looking for damage on a mill rate right now? Mill increase.
I haven't seen all of the revenue numbers, Dan, which would,
Offset it. Yep.
offset it, but if we were just looking at the grand list and what has been presented, we could be talking anywhere between a quarter to a half a mil easily at this point. And again, we're not looking at Board of Ed yet.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to
Sure.
clarify that point though. I just want to, because I've been taking notes on the increases as we've gone along. So no, we don't know what Board of Selectmen and Board of Ed are going to come back with, but if we look at the raw numbers, the first set of meetings between EDC, highway, land use, and the library was about 121,000. And then the last set of meetings, Board of Rec came in flat, Ambulance Association came in flat, and I think if I got it right, fire was 109,000 more. So we're looking at an increase of about 230 before Board of Ed comes in with theirs so far.
Just using the grand list number. So can anyone tell me what the grand list number was in millions? Oh, 572 million. It was a little bit more than that. So consider 1 mil to be 572,000. So if you apply the numbers you just brought forward, we'd be somewhere between a quarter and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah, they already cut the EDC budget without EDC discussion. So just to let you know, that went out the window real quick with no questions. But yeah,
Brett, don't bring an opinion. You know, you're presenting a conflict, which I don't want to entertain at this moment.
I just a point that I was taking.
Okay, let's temper it. Thank you. Mike, you've had your hand up, and then back to Ann.
I just, going back to the schedule and everyone's concerns, I mean, we're looking at a finishing in just after mid-May. You know, we've finished this process in the end of June in the past years. You know, so I think, this present discussion we're having is a little premature. We don't have a final budget from general government. We do not have any budget from the Board of Education. So, I just don't think that you can even talk about this stuff right now. And if, your neighbors are asking, Dan, it's really too early to say. I mean, I would say only to Dan Spring's point, if all things remain the same, we'd go down 8% because of the increase in the grand list. But I think Christine and Nita put together a good timeline. I'm certainly comfortable with it. I think, the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen coming to us with more fully vetted budgets right off the bat is not a bad thing. So let's move forward and onward.
Dan Smith and Brett.
Yeah, Mike.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Ann doesn't have the mechanical hand and it goes up and down. But Ann,
Yeah, I don't seem to have that button. Can you remind me what the debt redemption increase is?
We increased the redemption last year and we still had one tranche to close. Is that right, Christine?
Yes, I will double check it right now, but I want to say it's 178, but it might be 174. So let me just log in. $178,745 is the third loan payment.
Okay, so that's one thing that we're obligated to, and thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, but we'd closed the last tranche not too long ago, actually, and that payment comes up in this next fiscal year. Dan, I think it's to you, then Brett.
Yeah, so Mike, I get what you're saying, and whenever we go outside of the schedule, we always get we have to get this, we have to get it to the voters, we have to go, why aren't you guys getting it done quicker, go, 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 go. We got it last year, and I've seen it in years prior where If we start slipping the date, it's always going to be on the Board of Finance. We have to get through this. We have to get through this. We can't be taking this long. We are the oversight board. If it takes a little bit longer, what I don't want to have happen is we get into April and we're still going through it. We start getting the pressure from all sides saying, why aren't we getting this to a town meeting? It's our job to put forth the best budget that we think is in our ability to put forward to the town. And we still really haven't gotten a clear answer on if they're going to allow us to vote on it, correct?
The information that Mike's gotten from the state is that the first selectman has gotten from the state is that it will go to a budget or go to a vote. Yes.
Okay.
And again, Dan, as much as I hate to call them, but again, it comes down to responsibility. If we need to call special meetings, I will address that, announce it, and put them in the schedule so that we can be sure that we are satisfied with the data and what our resolution is relative to the proposed budget. Brett and then Carolyn.
Yeah, I just would like to request that when we do go over these budgets, that we do have them online for people to follow along with. Like I said, and I sent an email, I do believe it's the state's, in the governor's orders that should be done. And our surrounding Board of Finance towns, committees in other towns do that. I listened in on last night's Board of Selectmen meeting, and it is difficult to follow along as they talk about it. And I think it was they're at about a 4% increase on what they discussed last night, or what they've discussed up to date. But for someone that pays a lot of attention to this stuff, it was very difficult to follow along. I think for our members of our community that want to be aware of what's going on, I think it'd be important for us to have that posted with our meeting packet, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, that gets posted online with our agenda ahead of time, so people can follow along and understand the process and can look at it as we talk about it. I think there's so many different items in there this year that it's important to have that transparency, not only for us, but for the public. So I don't know, Dan, if you can request that happen, or if we have to make a motion to request that. But I think it's crucial for the public to really be aware. And that's what we talked about in the beginning of this whole process. That's why some extra meetings were even scheduled, to have that transparency and have the public involved. And if they can't follow along, they're going to lose track of what's going on just by trying to listen. Especially you have numbers, you have line items. It's like a bad crossword puzzle sometimes.
Relative to the motion, I mean, if there's an executive order, there's no need for us to have a motion. And I did bring it up to Board of Selectmen. I don't know if I got a defined answer, but the budgets are requested by the Board of Selectmen. They're submitted to the Board of Selectmen. So they should be posting what comes into them. That then is moved to presentation to the Board of Finance.
But if it's our meeting, then we need to have that put under our meeting, because the Board of Selectmen don't approve our agenda or add anything to it. That's why I'm asking, because it has come up at the Board of Selectmen, and last night they didn't do anything to have any of that information up for the public to follow along. So I'm worried that when it's our time and they're presenting here, since it's a Board of Finance meeting, it would be our duty to put that up.
Well, in that, the distribution is made to the Board of Finance members. I don't see why, it can't be put up on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, what else do I have here?
Dan, we have the town website here, and you look at it right now with the Board of Finance Zoom meeting for today. You had the agenda on there. There's no reason why we can't have a PDF there of the budgets that are going to be presented that night, correct?
Yeah. That should be pretty easy, quite frankly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Mike. That was my point.
Yeah, Carolyn.
I just wanted to say that I agree with what Mike just said, and Brett regarding posting, the agenda supporting documents so that everyone can see it. I was on the selectmen's meeting last night. I do try to watch their meetings just so I can understand what the discussions are ahead of time. For any of you who haven't already watched last night's meeting, it probably would be helpful because there was a lot of discussion and great detail. And then my other point was, I don't recall the fire company coming in at an increase of 109,000. Was that, I thought, is that including capital, or are you talking just operating?
No, I think that's the fixed, their section that they refer to as fixed charges that has the increase in the insurance, the increase for the per diem. Their operating line was only a less than $800 increase.
Yeah, $647.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, well, it's important to understand what they presented. I mean, they were asking for another per diem individual, as well as expenditure on radios. So those are the two big pieces.
So I may have had it wrong then. The per diem was 70. Or no, the per diem was 60. The radios were 32. But I thought there was something, I explicitly asked the question and then I wrote down 109. So that's what I have in my notes. But Christine, if I have it wrong.
I don't have that stuff. I didn't bring that home with me tonight. It was 70 for the per diem because it was an additional that we funded them at 50. And now they're saying it's going to be 60 per person.
Yeah.
But I don't recall offhand if there were other things
Yeah.
within their insurance lines and other.
Well, yeah, well, 70 and 32 alone would be 102. So if there was anything else, then that would, I don't know.
Yeah,
The actual numbers for the big pieces were 70 for per diem, 35 for radios, and 6 for turnout gear.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't care.
And my recommendation to them, at least on the radio piece, was rather than that being built into the budget, perhaps they could come forward with a request for an appropriation. Okay. Next on future strategies, I had Board of Finance members' reports, which we took a lot of time to talk about in the joint meeting. And relative to Carolyn's requests, which kind of emerged a lot of this. As a Board of Finance, we are oversight relative to the execution of the budget. It doesn't mean that we don't have the authority to ask for specific information, but I don't see it as part of our core mission relative to the execution of the budget, and then preparing the proposed budget. And that if a Board of Finance member has something that they think is germane and relative to our responsibilities, rather than single requests, it would be nice to come into the Board of Finance, have it in future strategies, have it the merit validated and then pursued. So it has a sense of protocol as opposed to pieces flying all over the place. Caroline?
So then could I request that we establish our agenda for our next meetings ahead of time so that we know what's going to be on the agenda ahead of time?
For instance, Caroline, I'm not sure where you're going with your question.
It would just be helpful to be able to plan ahead and know what we're going to be discussing rather than 24 hours in advance where all of a sudden we get an agenda sprung on us with no input, into what is on the agenda.
Well, in any one meeting, we can develop what should be on the next agenda into the future, which is what I'm proposing. So, there's still the venue for any Board of Finance members to say, hey, I think this is something we should pursue and talk about, have it vetted by its merits, voiced by the members, and then put on the agenda. So, yeah. That makes sense to me. Sarah, you had your name up?
I just wanted some clarification. So is that what the future strategies agenda item is for? I always thought of that as like a
Yeah,
big bucket that anything you wanted to talk about really kind of comes out because it's
absolutely. I don't think you see that on many other agendas, but it's something I've used in my tenure since 2010, which gives us the opportunity to develop something that may be coming up or that we want to bring forward that maybe I'm not cognizant of, relative to that meeting date, but can be brought forward for development. Yeah. Anne?
Well, I agree with Carolyn's request for some of the information. And if there is already a report that is generated that shows date, check amount, who is being paid, and what line item it's associated with, then I say, let's get that report for a couple of months, see if it's providing what we want, if we're even using it, and then make a decision from there.
And in due respect, I would say if we're requesting that information, I'd like to have some intent for the request. And that it should be moving to something that we think is relative and germane. Now, Carolyn can say, well, it's how money is spent and tax savings, but rather than having a lot of data that isn't necessarily, I think, part of our responsibility, looking at check registers, I'd like to have some intent. Why are we looking at it? Is there something that we're looking for? Is there something that we are concerned about in our oversight?
Well, I think a lot of the questions that we have been generating over the last couple of months about what it costs to run 298 Norwich Westerly, we could probably have answered a lot of it ourselves with the information that would be provided.
Okay, I would throw that back to Board of Selectmen in that is an asset that they manage. They should have the answers readily available for our interest, at least in terms of how it impacts the budget. And again, I'm not sensing strong cohesion relative to the Board of Selectmen's plan. So, I mean, that would be a concern. So that, that would show intent. And then, we have two selectmen on. I think they've been hearing this concern for a few meetings now. And, does it mean that we have to re-navigate how they are handling the expenses for the middle school and high school? It's for them to come forward with a plan, not for us to develop the plan. Sarah, next. I'm sorry, Anne, I'm sorry.
I don't think it affects what they do at all. They still do what they do. It's just more information for us to help us answer our own questions. Mike has already said that he's perfectly willing to provide us this information. It sounds like there is already a report being generated that has the information on it we're looking for. It's there. Why don't we see if it helps us?
I think Carolyn said that relative to what's been expended so far, she'd be happy to generate it. And I think if I can make myself clear again, if it's going to be a budget item, which it should be, I would expect to have very specific backup so that we know what the expenses are going to be. Sarah, then Brett, and then Carolyn.
I don't have any concerns about requesting a report if there's a specific report we want. I think I've been I've been on the receiving end of people wanting data, and then you have to deal with the onslaught of questions about the data. And I empathize with sort of Christine's position. I think we have to be specific about what we want. If what we're worried about is 298, and that clearly has come up over and over and over again since like November, I'm keeping track, in every single meeting, then the discussion should be about what we need to be comfortable with our concerns about 298. And I put forward a suggestion. If that's not enough detail, then maybe we should talk about that. If we really want a report on everything, I guess my question would be, are we going to ask Board of Ed to do the same thing? Because what's the purpose of it other than like a sweeping report to understand all of the expenses across the town that we pay for? So I think I just would like to understand how we actually get to a reasonable, solvable. I just want to know what we're trying to solve for. And if we know what we're actually trying to solve for, then we can discuss what makes the most sense to solve for that.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, what you've had to say is pretty close to what I'm saying, maybe in different words. But, let's demonstrate intent, concern, have it vetted relative to the merit by the Board of Finance members, and then go after it. And then we have a sense of protocol, as opposed to an individual Board of Finance member making requests using the town email, to generate those requests. And then the question is, well, why? I mean, even as the chair, I would say, why did that request come in? What's the intent? So, I mean, to me, it's pretty clear. So, we're trying to run it as a board, not as a bunch of individuals, but collaboratively as a board and relative to our chartered responsibilities. I'm trying to keep count here. I think, Brett, you were next.
Yeah, I actually agree with Ann and Carolyn that if that report is generated already, why the hesitation and why even the question of it being sent forward? I think there is intent to clarify some of these questions, especially on 298. We'll bring that up again. And there has been some miscommunication and not all the facts were out there. I mean, when we went through that report, there was, I don't have it in front of me, but there was one bill for Caswell that talked about how they redid something, yet that bill and that payment wasn't under that line item. So if we never had any of these issues, then yeah, I would say, okay, there's no reason for it. But there's been demonstrated issues where we aren't getting all the information. The last meeting we had when we talked about 298, it was never brought up that bills were being held back and weren't being paid. So when I saw that increase, I fell off my chair. Like, that never came up in that meeting, that we were withholding bills and not paying them until that meeting.
Brett, can I just, before, when the discussion of the meeting was brought up, Mike said that we would hold, and I don't remember if it was in the Board of Finance meeting or if it was in the Board of Selectmen's meeting, but he did say that we were going to hold off on paying any more bills because it was a hot topic of discussion and we wanted to make sure that everybody was on board and we had the meeting before anything else was paid. So I don't remember which meeting it was in, but he did say in a public meeting that we were doing that.
Yeah, and I get that, but $30,000 is a lot of bills to hold. And hopefully we didn't get any late payment charges on that by not paying those. But I do think if that report would satisfy the need of Carolyn and Ann and obviously, and even myself, to see what is going through and then rectify those things in our own minds to say, okay, things are all here. We don't have any issues. I mean, we have to rebuild the trust on both sides. I've said this before.
Okay, Brett, you're kind of repeating on the topic a lot. What I'm saying is that it just should have a protocol, not that we shouldn't have it.
right.
rather than.
Then I'd like to make a motion that we request that report to be sent to us monthly
What
or
report?
for our meetings.
What report?
Bob,
What's the title? What are you talking about? 298?
nope, the report of the check runs that the Board of Selectmen get.
Okay. What's interesting to me, Brett, is that when I watch the body language of Ann and Caroline and you're all kind of common relative to all the checks, which is something that the three of you seem to have some commonality about, but the rest of the board members are saying, why do we need to look at it? And what is the intent? I mean,
Well, the reason I say that, and I made a motion, but the reason I say that is because it's something already generated, so it's no extra work for Christine. That's what I'm trying to solve here. It's not extra work, it's already there, and it sounds like it would solve Carolyn's questions and Ann's questions. So why not get it? And if after, like they said, after 6 months, it seems like extra information.
Brett, the only thing I'm bringing up here, and I'm not being adverse to your request, is that before all of that, I'd like to see a sense that we can agree on a protocol that we're willing to, through future strategies, bring whatever the concern may be, see what the consensus of the board is. If we want that report, then it will be on the
Hold on.
next agenda. Dan Smith, you're next, and then Mike.
I made a motion. Point of order, if there was a second, then we can discuss it.
But I asked you what report it was, Brad. Give me some definition.
I think it was an invoice report or something that had invoices on it that, Christine, you should know what it is. You send it to the selectmen every single month. That's what Mr. Carlson said. It's a report that you already generate. So it should be.
I honestly legitimately don't know that it has a title because it's not, I don't run it. Susan runs it when she runs the checks. So I unfortunately can't help you guys. It doesn't have a title on the top.
So it's really no extra work for you. It's Susan actually that's running the report.
She runs it and she sends it to me and then I distribute it to the selectmen, and it's an individual report every time we run checks. So it's not going to be one file, just so you guys know.
So Brett, we'll come back to you. You were generating a motion, but I asked you like what report? I mean,
So it's the
was it
individual check.
specific to 298 or just everything? I mean, let's be specific.
I'm specific to the report that the selectmen get for the check runs, because I don't want to make extra work. So if it's already there, we don't need to dive in the 298 separately, and that makes extra work for the office. So if it's something that they get, the selectmen get, I just made a motion for that to be forwarded to us for our meetings.
I would second that.
There's a motion on the floor.
I will second it.
Okay, any other discussion? Let's see, Mike, maybe you're next relative to discussion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Brett, you're privy to things that go on in the Board of Selectmen meeting. What is this report? It just shows all the checks that were written for that month or for the following the earlier week. What is that?
So it's a report that is generated when we do a check run that has everything that's been paid in that series of checks. So since not all the selectmen sign the checks, they like to know what's being approved and what's being paid out. So it has everything that's being paid, who the vendors are, what line items it's coming out of, and what the amount is that's being paid to the vendor.
Okay, so it has line items on it.
Mhm.
So we would be able to, just so we know that this thing is actually going to give us the information that we want, we would be able to parse through that and say, all right, this is being paid to CLNP for 298.
Yes, so it would say Eversource $100, B2710 for 298. Then it would have Eversource $300 for the rec building, and so on and so forth.
Okay. And Brett, you want to have this thing sent to us before every meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to amend it to once a month, but I just think it would solve a lot of this back and forth and the emails that, and the information that Carolyn asked about and a lot of our issues with some of the 298 stuff.
I would ask that you ask for it once a month with your profit and loss, because like today I was getting everything together for the selectmen, and I saw that I did not have all the reports. So I don't know, we don't run checks every week. So I don't necessarily know that when there's going to be a report, and then I go back and say, I have this one. Was that the only time we ran checks? No. And then I need to get the other reports from it. So.
I'm happy to amend it to once a month, and because I'm not trying to be, make any more work for anybody, but I'm trying to solve some of these issues that we face sometimes, and some of the information Carolyn requests and others request, and it's public information anyways, and it's already there. So it doesn't hurt to be able to just see it, and then if there is an issue, address it right away. So this doesn't build, resentment doesn't build, and we can just all move forward. That's all.
Okay, I'm just, if I may, Dan, still continue. I'm just questioning Brett on this, and, is there a amount spent year to date on that same report, Christine?
No, it's an individual
And-
report for the checks that were generated.
Okay, but that would be on the profit and loss statement year to date though, correct?
Correct.
So what is the point of having that document when we're having the profit and loss, which is really the document that really tells us what we want to know? How much has been spent on this for this fiscal year? What does this do for us?
Are you asking me personally?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're the one who you made the motion.
I made a motion, and I was, Carolyn brought it up earlier, but what it does do is it makes sure it's checks and balances. Like anything else, there needs to be checks and balances. And this allows us also to make sure things are being paid and credited to the right line item. Like I said, the Caswell masonry work, that was not anywhere listed on 298. We would be able to see that check being run and what it was for, and then we'd be able to look at the profit and loss and see that it wasn't on there. And you see it in real time compared to 6 months later, and it's too late to understand where this money went and how much the true cost to our taxpayers some of this stuff costs. I mean, Carolyn might have more info because she dove more into this.
So I'll just comment and say, to answer Chairman Spring, the purpose of the Board of Finance is to restrain wasteful spending. So in looking at these things on a regular basis, we would see if there's something that we should be discussing in our future strategies. But if we're looking at things after the fact, like the things that we're finding out about the 298 building way down the road, where there's already been an appropriate spending, I mean, it's just, had the taxpayers been aware sooner, this whole thing, we may be in a different situation. And I just think it's really important to have, we claim we have an open government, we have OpenGov. Now they're talking about getting a different software, but we need to have a way for the public to see where the money's going and help to, find a better way. We need a better way, because we only have so much money to go around. And, I think we need to just look at where we can spend our dollars smarter, make them go farther. And when we have these types of conversations, even a simple conversation, you could save thousands and thousands of dollars, and it all adds up. And that's my point. It's not, I just think it's important, and we're not making any more work for anyone. So I'm not really sure why there's pushback on it.
Carolyn, there's not pushback. One, you use yourself as individual taxpayer, then you use yourself as Board of Finance members. as chair of the Board of Finance members, I just want to have a little cohesion for the benefit of all members on the Board of Finance. That's all. That's all I'm asking for. So there's no pushback. Dan Smith, I think you were next.
Actually, I think Bob Carlson had his hand up for a while and then put it back down. So if he still wants to talk, I'll yield to
Yield to
him.
Bob. Bob,
The
go
only thing
ahead.
I was gonna say, Dan, was that when Brett mentioned having a weekly, I was just gonna tell him that it's a monthly report that we get, and if he did it anything more than a monthly, it would create more work, and he himself said he didn't want to create more work. So I just wanted to let him know it was a monthly report. It's not a weekly report. It would be more work to do it weekly. So thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Go ahead, Dan, you're up.
Yeah, I'll agree with Carolyn and Brett. I would like to see it monthly. I do think it should be scoped towards the biggest problem child in this town. It's going to be that old school. I do fear that $150,000 is not going to be nearly enough, especially if they're burning at the same rate with 3+ months more to go in the wintertime, and then having to cool it in the summer. I'm fearful that if we don't get ahead of this and make sure we track on our side all the expenditures and making sure that the Board of Selectmen are on the same page as us and have a clear defined path of it seems like it's like, all right, we're going to go try to get somebody to lease. Has anybody gone out and gotten comps if we even really wanted to sell it, how much we could get for it? I don't think that has happened. So I think both boards need to kind of work together on this. I think the register would help once a month, help us track it. It's just my thought.
Okay, it just to kind of link everything up here, so we're not repeating. You know, the report is available. There's no reason why we shouldn't look at it. I think what Dan said, that our concern has been to 298. So to me, that's a point of intent. You know,
And if you're looking for me to say that, if you're looking for a point of intent, I think it's, if you're looking for somebody from the Board of Finance to say, you need somebody to say, we need intent. That is the intent. 298 Norwich Wesley Road, that old school is the intent. We need to get a hold of it. So if you as a chairman looking for somebody to go out on a limb and say, we need intent, that is the intent. And we need to have as much documentation, and especially when the selectmen present their budget, we should be, it's like going out and buying a house. They want 2 years worth of IRS record. We should be getting so much information that we're flooded with it.
All right, thank you, Dan. Christine, I'm going to have Christine come in and then back up to Sarah Nelson.
I just have a question on my side of things. So with providing this report to you guys, I just want to know what the expectation is going to be from me to answer questions on it, because I'm not going to have all the checks and everything. So if you get the report and then we come and say, okay, check number 1, 2, 3 written to Eversource on this date, give us the, you know, what was the specifics on this, or what was the intention? What's the expectation of me to respond to whatever the questions are? So you're getting the report, and then what do you want back?
I would think that, you know, since I made the motion, that there wouldn't be a direct answer needed that next meeting. If something were, in my mind, I can't speak for others, but in my mind, if something were to be questioned or there was a concern, that it could be mentioned at the meeting during the profit and loss, and then at the next meeting followed up. Christine, you do a great job, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot on that moment to answer a question and to not have the right information. I'd rather them say, I don't have that information, I'll get it and then go back. I don't think this is anything so anyone's grilled on anything. I just think it will help with the transparency and the communication.
And Mike Anderson.
Thank you. I was so anxious to respond to all that. Like a little kid yelling at the teacher. I mean, to tie this all back in, Dan Spring, I mean, it goes to your point of, okay, rather than throw out an email, 2 days before the meeting saying, I want this information, you come in, you say, all right, I would like Christine to bring this report forward, monthly or whatever. And then when that happens, if there's someone that needs to be there, we can plan to have that person there to answer any questions on this check went to what, this check went to where. So there is intent, there is planning. It's not just email. We talk about it at a Board of Finance meeting. It's on the agenda for future strategies. We say at the next meeting, Christine, please have that report that you presented to the last Board of Selectmen meeting, that you gave them that, whatever, the check sheet. And please have available anybody that we need to answer questions with regard to that check sheet at that next meeting. And so now we know why we're asking for information. We know it's going to be at the next meeting. The information is going to be presented to us beforehand, and whoever needs to answer questions on that will be at that next meeting. That's a future strategy, and that's how this should go, to Dan Spring's point.
Okay, so as far as getting checks approved and payments, it's every single department in town hall. It's the highway department, it's boards and commissions, it's chairs of boards that are approving things. So
that would be part of a new future strategy at that meeting. If someone had an issue about a certain check, then they're going to have to, then we would have to have that be.
So you would identify it at
yes,
the meeting on the 3rd, and then at the meeting on the 8th, you would want that person there.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's how it really should go. Correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, but I think that's the point of this whole future strategies is, if you want to see something, bring it up at the meeting. We can talk about it. We can decide whether or not, we need that information. If we do, we have it for the next, we put it forward. It goes to the next meeting. If there's questions that arise there, that goes to another future strategy for whoever we need there to answer any question that we have. So I think, Brett, maybe you should just revise your motion. I agree. If you want to, to Dan Smith's point, if we want to have information regarding 298 and whether that's included in a big report or that doesn't cost any more work for Christine for the next meeting, then we should just vote for that to be presented.
Well, yeah, Mike, I would leave my motion as is, just amend it to be monthly, because by narrowing it down and saying 298, we might not see some of the things that were coded to a different line.
Agreed. Yeah. So if it's, and that would give Christine more work if we had to tail it down. So just, revise your motion to be monthly and get a second on it.
Okay, Sarah Nelson is up next.
Yeah, so I think obviously something has to be done, and we're not going to stop talking about this. I do think we need to go in with eyes wide open that this is actually more work. So it's not more work for Christine, because some of the conversation I've heard over the last 6 months is, well, we didn't know about it and we weren't told and we didn't have this information. And it's really just like, I don't know the answer to your question and let me get it for you next week. But that's not ever how it gets remembered. So I think we have to be really honest with ourselves as a board that if you give somebody 17 pages of information, they're going to have 1,700 questions about it, and it will be absolutely more work. But if that's what we need to get to so that people can feel comfortable, then fine. I did ask Christine at the beginning of the meeting to prep something that I thought would be useful, but I don't want her to do double work. So it would be good if we could talk about that. So if that isn't something that is helpful, because now you're going to get it in a bigger report, then that's fine. We can take that off the table so it's less work. But I feel like we have to just be honest, because it's 100% going to be more work. And then as a follow-on question, I don't think like, we're just talking about the Board of Selectmen's budget, right? So is there something specific in general that we only want Board of Selectmen's budget, or as Board of Finance, should we be looking at all the budget, including Board of Ed across the whole town? If we're going to apply that sort of logic of, well, we just want to see everything so we can find opportunities to save money.
Well, my response to you, Sarah, and kind of what I've said in the beginning, that we're really in place to oversee the execution of the budget. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't do a drill down on a line item if we have concern. But the concern, is identified by intent, as opposed to us just looking at the administration of all the checks written in the town. I mean, that's what we have a treasurer for. We have Board of Selectmen that are signing off for the checks. We have a bookkeeper, and we have an auditing service. So, I'm not saying that this stuff shouldn't be looked at, but, it should be with intent relative to a line item that's impactful to the budget as we see it in terms of the execution. So it's kind of my summation of it. Carolyn?
I just think that, I mean, my intent is to just look at the broad picture. If there's something that I think should be questioned, I would ask the question. And certainly I wouldn't expect Christine to have an answer that day. And I would certainly be willing to put my questions in writing so that, we could all not be duplicating requests. I'm not opposed to looking at how the Board of Ed spends their money, although, we're told that we don't have any control over that anyways. I think that we should be looking at how we're spending money, for the entire town. And I think with the new software that they're talking about purchasing, that they talked about it last night, that would be the same software that the school is using. I think eventually everyone's going to be on the same page anyways. And so that information would be easily shared. But at this point, we're not there yet. So I think this is a start, and I think it's good. And I'm not sure, I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing where the money's going. And if there is something that should be questioned, that it's questioned sooner rather than later. And if there's nothing to be questioned, then that's great. And I would happily, I don't want to keep going in circles. I would just like to be able to see the information. And if there's a question, we can ask the question and get the answer and then move on. Because certainly we could spend our time, discussing other things.
Carolyn, we're kind of repeating the issue quite a bit. And there's a motion on the floor, but relative to your point, back to my point, as a board, I'd like the information to come into the board and then the request made. That way everybody's on board with it. Simple. C'est simple, simple. And everybody knows what's going on. So that links to your sense of transparency and all of us knowing and being able to voice an opinion. Dan Smith, you're next.
Chairman, move to vote.
Thank you. We'll do this by poll. Dan Smith,
Yay.
Ann Aiken,
Aye.
Carolyn Howell,
Yay.
Mike Anderson,
Yay.
Brett Mastriani,
Yay.
and I'll put in a yay. So it's 6-0-0. Okay, so that's passed. All right, let's move on. To
Dan Smith has a hand up.
What's that again?
Dan Smith has a hand up.
I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
So Dan, just to recap, so you want to have your basically all the requests go through the future strategy section of the meetings, the meeting prior. So if we have a question, we bring it during that.
Right.
You don't want to have it sent to you in an email. You just want to basically brought up at that time, correct?
Correct. That way it's in a public forum. It's not going back and forth in an email, and that everyone's kind of on board as to how we're navigating it, as opposed to everyone making requests individually and then how is it germane or relevant? Let's be cohesive in our effort.
Is this something that you would want to capture in either a motion or a policy for the board? Do you think it's that volatile or potentially volatile down the line where we need to have, and this kind of goes possibly back to where this board doesn't have any bylaws or anything?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. We've talked about this once, that it would be nice to construct some bylaws where this would be a provision in the bylaws. So there's a protocol to how we do this, so that, there is cohesion, that we're acting as a body as opposed to individuals. And then using taxpayer versus Board of Finance members or both, or, having it going back and forth in an email, that the danger is that whatever the request is or what the opinion is, it's answered in the email.
Yep.
If that happens, it's a violation. So we want to keep it in a public forum.
So
The other is, I would not anticipate, and I've warned you all about this, collusion. These are things that we do not talk about with each other. It comes to the cohesion of the meeting, the public meeting.
So
it's
Dan,
very transparent.
I
And
know
the other is relative to the budget and all of these things we talk about. I know a number of you, and not that I'm involved, are very participative in social forums. I would be very careful what you say. You may be voicing what, may represent you as a Board of Finance member, but may not be cohesive relative to how the Board of Finance is navigating.
So Dan, I know I'm going to beat myself in the head for this, but if you would like, and if the rest of the board so chooses, I can take a look at some of other towns of bylaws.
Sure. I would welcome that.
I know I'm going to beat myself in the head for it, but
You did a good job.
at least
You did a
at
good
least
job
get
on your policy assignment.
yeah. Just as I get done with one major one, I get done. But just to set some preliminary stuff, just kind of like a fishing expedition to see what's kind of going out there, seeing what other towns, kind of like what Bob did with the code of ethics, seeing what other towns are doing, everything, if it's super detailed, or we don't have one, so we have nothing to gauge it against.
I'd be happy to help you with that, Dan.
Okay. Nita, nice to hear from you.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, of course. We want to get through the budget. So yeah,
Yep.
the summer would be a great time to do it.
All right.
What I wanted to ask then, are you, in the way this was voted on, are you saying that this material that people have been looking to get on their own will not be done that way? It will be brought to you and you will bring it in?
To the Board of Finance, correct?
Yes. Is that correct? We won't have 5 people wandering around?
No,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
it comes to a public forum. Yep. And bylaws, I'm going to put Dan Smith and Ann Aiken down. Was not on the agenda, but it's open in future strategies. So we haven't gone to public comment yet.
Can I
thank you
just,
for
Mike's got his hand up.
that. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, I understand the bylaws and trying to get things. And I think, Dan, looking around to see what else other towns are doing is a great idea. Just being on other nonprofit boards, I mean, we've had some revisions in bylaws this year because we realize that, when you're not in compliance, it's just one more thing for people to hold your face to the grindstone, if that's even a term. But I just feel like, the more that we hog tie ourselves to certain written policies when we don't necessarily need to, it's just one consideration. I mean, I think if somebody emails on our town email to request information, I don't think it's hard for the chairman who's going to know about this unwritten policy that, hey, bring that to future strategies. You're not going to be provided that information, and that's it. So it's not a hard fix. Certainly look around for what other towns are doing, but I just be careful about, putting ourselves into hard and fast rules where we don't need to. That's just my 2 cents.
I think one of the benefits might be for bylaws is for new members. Okay, how is this oriented? How do I participate? How do I contribute in a way that's beneficial to the board and to my responsibilities to the town? So.
And also, Mike, with us being not a charter town, it does kind of throw things for a little bit more of a loop where the state statutes are the state statutes. They are what they are. But like what Dan was saying, we need to have a little more guidance for like, you know what, hey, in a couple of years, I could not be on the board, or, Dan might not be on the board, you might not be on the board, and we're going to have replacements. And, when you have a turnover on the board, you don't want to have only 2 people on the board that have all the tribal knowledge on everything, and then have to bring everybody back up to speed. It'd be nice to have kind of this is how we do business.
I agree with you, Dan. Good, very good points. I'm happy to see what you can provide after your exhaustive search this summer.
Well, whatever it is, Mike, it's going to be totally open to revision.
Sure.
Absolutely. At least 5.
Okay, Brett, and then we're going to move on to public comments. Brett?
Yeah. I just would be cautious on some of this. Mike's comment made me think as well. There is the borderline question of what has to go through a board to get information, and what's the right as a citizen and resident and taxpayer of North Stonington to ask for certain things. I've been a chair of a board for 10 years almost, and I have members that reach out to town hall employees and to the first selectman and request information or ask for things, and it doesn't always go through the chair. So I just would be very cautious to say, Anita mentioned something about that everything needs to go through the chair to request any information. And
it's 9 o'clock.
Part of that is a violation of rights as residents and elected officials, to be quite honest with you. And Nita, you're shaking your head, and I love you, but it is. I mean,
Brett, stop. Everybody has a right to the information. It's all public information, as we have said. What I'm talking about as a voice of the board, we should have some cohesion. Doesn't mean that you can't seek out information, but if it's relative and germane to the Board of Finance, all the members should be aware of it. That's all.
Oh, I totally agree with you, Dan. I'm worried about the confusion about where is that line, and where's that line that says, okay, well, that's a Board of Finance information, and that's, I just worry that, all of a sudden any request now gets denied for information because they say, nope, it's got to go through the chair of the Board of Finance.
All right, so let me give you a simple example, Brett. I don't know why you tend to want to be adverse to something that we've been very open about up to this point in time. Here's a point. Carolyn is requesting through the Board of Finance email information from Christine. So wouldn't Christine say, well, gee, is this for the Board of Finance or is this just for Carolyn? And if it's for the Board of Finance, maybe I should, contact Dan and see what he thinks. Is it germane and relevant to the responsibilities in the charter of the Board of Finance?
You're right. I guess I disagree, because people comment for EDC, they'll get information, and nobody reaches out to me and says, hey, should I give this information out to your members? Because they're an elected official, and you're elected as the chair of the committee, but it doesn't give you ultimate authority. And I'm not saying you specifically, I'm just saying in general, it's a slippery slope, and I just would hate to violate anyone's rights by doing that. But I agree that if there's some issues that need to be addressed as the Board of Finance, then yeah, that should be talked about as the future strategies and ask for that information. But
let me make myself perfectly clear, Brett. I'm not poisoning myself as a gatekeeper here. I'm just saying if it's something germane and relative to the Board of Finance, as a cohesive group, we should know about it. That's all.
I agree on that level.
Okay, thank you. That's enough. Carolyn, let's make it quick. I want to move to public comments.
Whoa.
Is if I request information as a Board of Finance member or as a taxpayer through my town email account, and I'm sending it to Christine, then I'm expecting that the information would go back to the Board of Finance. It could go back to you, and you could certainly send it along to everyone else. I'm not asking to have information sent to my town email, for me as a taxpayer. If I'm asking for something personally, I would have it sent to my home email address.
But if it's relative to the responsibilities of the Board of Finance, I should not be answering you in the email. It should be in a public forum.
I'm not asking for any answers or any back and forth. I'm just asking for information that it be provided, and then we can discuss it at our meeting. That's all that I'm asking for. So
Well, what I'm saying is if you're going to request something from Christine that is relative to the responsibilities, and we talked about this already, bring it to future strategies. I think everybody kind of agreed to that, had a consensus there.
we've accomplished what I was looking for. So thank you everyone who supported my request and Brett's motion. And hopefully going forward, we can spend a lot more time doing more work for the town rather than talking about this directly. Thank you.
Okay, Board of Finance members, can we move to public comments, or is there something that really needs to be answered?
Move the subject.
Public comments sound good to me.
Okay, let's move to
Agreed.
public comments. Christine, if you can help us out.
Yep, Joe already has his hand up. So Joe Gross, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Now, am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted.
All right,
Am I
Christine,
seeing you,
you
Joe, or
can
the
see my
cat?
picture?
Yes, I saw the picture of the cat, Joe.
Yes.
That's for you, babe. We got something done. Gentlemen, I'm gonna ask you, don't hold me to my 2 minutes, please. I asked you if your meeting's recorded, go home and listen to it, and you're gonna come up with what I say. Brett, I thank you. Mike, you had great comments. Dan, you did 2 things. One thing is you asked what the power of the board is. You all got the handbook. Page 13 will tell you exactly what the hell your power is. Page 45 will tell you exactly what the suggested calendar is with a budget. You see it right there. You haven't looked at your handbook, but I'm showing it to you. The problem with the board you have right now, believe me, is discipline. If you people would discipline yourselves, look at that damn calendar there. It's exactly what you got. You don't discipline yourself, so anybody that feeds you information is not disciplined. I thank you for that. I think the public needs some of these comments here. These things that for the meeting tonight, the profit loss reports and that, I tried to get them all day. I can't get them. You gotta be pretty damn dumb to sit here where I am and what you guys talked about, a profit loss and B23, B2723. That was Dan's thing on hazmat. I don't know what the hell you're doing. So I want to look at things in there too. I think what you've done now with that checkbook thing, you will know exactly what the hell is going on in town. To really know, and I want a copy of that too. So anything you guys get, could you please just give me a copy? I want to work with the board. I like to work with the board. I mean, there's things in here, this handbook, and what I'm going to ask tonight, I'm going to ask each board member for your support too. I've been trying to do it, but this is mine. You can see how I got all my pages and everything in there like that. It's a very important book. I'm serious with it. I would like to have every member of the board support me in the first 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes of your meetings, if you would take and have Chris go through that with you, certain chapters within a year. I know that every one of you would know what your job is, what your responsibilities are, and damn, you would be surprised exactly what you should be doing and not doing. I'm sure I'm not running nobody down. I think everybody's got to be educated to that. If you have that book, and I'm asking you to please take 10 minutes or 50 minutes before each meeting, Dan, and just go through that chapter. Within a year, you're going to have the smartest board going, and you won't have to go to other boards in the towns. That thing will tell you exactly what to do. So I'm asking your support. And if I was able to, I'd like to make a motion, then I know you'd have to vote on it, but I can't do that. But please give it consideration, and I'm serious. If you went through that thing, that doggone thing, that book could take it. So many problems that you mentioned tonight would be gone. Like I say, the calendar, that calendar that's in that book is exactly what you guys got. The only thing is you don't discipline. You wanted the Board of Ed in, you gave them another 2 weeks. You want this one in, you give them another 3 weeks. You guys are gonna pay in the end, not them, you guys. You guys gotta be disciplined, and that's it. You come in and that's the way it's gonna be. And you gotta be hardcore on some things, but yet you gotta recognize when somebody can't meet that their date because of a reasonable request, then you gotta give it to them. And you gotta make up for it somewhere. But that calendar, you're gonna come into it and you're gonna do exactly what you've been doing this year. You're gonna be bumped right up against the end. And Dan Smith, you said that over again and over. Be ready for it because you can see it coming. It's coming. Discipline. You must discipline yourself. And it's hard to discipline yourself if you don't know what your responsibilities are and anything else that's in here. And it's a hell of a big thing to learn. I'm glad you guys got the book, but I'll guarantee you, if I ask you everyone right now, you guys haven't looked at that book. You haven't had time. So at that meeting, Dan, as the chairman, it's your responsibility with new members or whatever you want, educate them and bring them in, and we'll have one hell of a good board. Not that we don't have a good board now. My thing right now is when I get off this meeting, I can see an unhappy chairman, I can see unhappy board members, and it just came right out tonight. It's a shame, but that's fact. I don't give you any bull, I'm giving you fact. You guys are unhappy, the chairman's unhappy, but discipline, please, and please, 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 go through this doggone book at each meeting, and I'm sure it's gonna really do a heck of a good job for you guys. And you're gonna say, damn, I wish I knew that there a month ago. You're gonna really say that to yourself because it's a very good book. Thank you for the time and let me talk to you.
Thank you, Joe. Always appreciate your contribution.
Don't forget though, educate, we're gonna do that 15 minutes. I'm gonna come back every meeting until you do it. Thank you, guys.
I heard your idea. Thank you. Next, Christine.
If you have any other public comment, please raise your hand or unmute yourself so that you can be recognized. We don't have many public left on at this point. Not that there were that many to begin with, but.
Can I raise mine one more time? If you don't have any?
Yes.
I can. Hey, you guys mentioned, and I'm not, believe me, I'm speaking for myself as an interested taxpayer, Joe G. You talked that you had $617 in the distance you had in the fireman's thing. I'll show you that that 617 where you owe them $383,000. Just between your last year's things that you guys did and what you did here. That's what they've been under. And I'm gonna show it to you when you guys go through that stuff. And I apologize, please. That's just my personal comment. Nothing to do with the fire department or anybody else. I've been through the budget and I'll be going through the Board of Ed budget too. When they get it ready to give it to me. So,
Thank you, Joe.
okay.
Hey, Joe, the handbook for Connecticut Boards of Finance, was that the 1992 edition that you have with you?
Yes, but it hasn't changed because anytime I discuss somebody with someone like you, Mike, and I know what's up on things, I go on the computer to see if it's been changed. And believe me, 99% of the time, they haven't changed that book since 1992. It's the same as our laws that are back in colonial day eras, our state statutes. They keep.
Well, I just want to make sure. Because it's you just Google it, guys, and it'll come up.
I
Yes,
had emailed it to the board members earlier this year.
Yeah,
Mike,
everybody,
if you're
everybody
going
was
through
sent
the
the handbook.
book and you have a serious question on one of the items, go on the computer and bring it up to make sure that they haven't changed that paragraph. But they haven't done any changes as far as I've been on it.
Thank you,
Check it.
Joe. Any other public comments, Christine?
No more public comments.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn. Did I hear that from Dan?
Yep.
Yes.
Second.
And what's the second?
I support that too.
So do I.
Your hand's still up, Joe.
I'm going to take it unanimously, and the time at 9:12. And as Pharrell would say, be happy.
All right, so our homework is the first 15 pages of the handbook.
15 minutes he was talking about, Ann.
The handbook is
Your homework is to memorize the handbook.
Just one more.
in my
thing.
top drawer of my
The
desk.
minutes that you must keep in your meetings. Any item that comes up for a vote, that's the minute you must report in your minutes. And not only do
Absolutely.
you report it, but you report the name of the individuals and how they voted. Am I right on that, Tris?
Yes.
That's what you have to do. Any item that comes up for vote. That's the
Joe,
one
you're
you
going to
must
spoil
do.
their reading if you tell them everything now.
Okay.
Good night, Joe.
That's it.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.